Got to be. I guess it's starting, y'all. All the shelves are empty, and this is where all the vegetables and the fruit and everything is. Y'all.
We have some big news right now. The United States will soon face likely supply chain issues as the last ships from China are arriving in the United States unencumbered and unimpacted by the tariffs. Well, according to CNN, starting next week, ships coming into the United States will face that 145% tariff. And as a result, companies are going to have to start making a critical decision. Are we going to be paying more to import or export goods and import them into the United States and therefore make American consumers pay more for what they're shipping in? Or are they going to just stop shipping in these goods altogether? And as a result, things like toys, clothing, electronics, appliances, and so much more, which are not impacted by exemptions, which are directly impacted by tariffs, will start costing more, or the United States will just not have as much of. And as a result, you'll have higher demand here in the United States because you won't have enough product to meet that demand. And well, as a result, you'll have supply chain issues.
There's so little bread. They don't even got cornbread. They only got the corn.
So I'm in Dollar General, or Dollar Tree rather. The shelves are bare. You think that these tariffs and the stuff that we get from China is not coming because the shelves are bare. I have never seen it this empty. This is crazy. It's almost like pandemic level. There's nothing in here.
We have some really big news right now. The executive director of the Port of LA is expecting shipping to plummet as much as 35% as a result of Donald Trump's tariffs on China, which will take effect, or really have already taken effect in the past couple of days. And as a result, he is warning of supply chain issues. He is warning inventory could be affected at stores as the summer season begins. Executive Director Gene Soroka spoke with local KTLA in Los Angeles and said that he expects the amount of shipping quantity to come through the port to drop about 35%. And as a result of the tariffs, many American retailers have downsized their orders from China, which means that there could be a shortage of goods on store shelves. Folks, this is likely just the beginning. We're about to see potentially a significant drop-off in goods imported into America from China, which will impact your daily lives. It's just a fact of the matter. Things will get more expensive. You'll have less opportunity to buy certain things from China.
What the hell? What the hell? What the helly? What the helly on say? What the helly on? What the helly berry? What the helly bird?
The Port of Los Angeles is the busiest in the Western Hemisphere, but now it's preparing for a dramatic slowdown, according to Executive Director Gene Soroka.
What do you anticipate happening over the next couple of weeks?
In 2 weeks' time, Carter, we'll see a drop on our import side of the business by about a third. It could be as much as 40% the week to follow. Most American importers are saying that they're stopping shipments out of China because they simply weren't going to pay 2.5 times the cost of the goods.
With a 145% tariff, a container of Chinese goods worth $100,000 will now cost importers an extra $145,000.
With information coming out of Washington seemingly by the hour, it's tough to get a line of sight on what's next. Inventory on hand right now in the United States will last for about 6 to 8 weeks. After that, shelves will be bare. We won't be able to buy as much online.
All of these games come from China.
At the Game Chest, owner Mariam Ahamami has been stockpiling toys and games that arrived before the tariffs.
So I'm buying what I think I'll sell between now and September.
You sound like a hoarder.
I feel like a hoarder. If you've seen my stores, you would see the hoarding in the back rooms.
80% of her merchandise comes from China, and board games are her biggest sellers.
Seems like you should be able to make a board game in the U.S.
It's true. It does look easy, but it's filled with lots and lots of different parts and pieces. And there's just not enough manufacturing here to be able to do that successfully.
At this point, even if the tariffs are reduced significantly,
It'll still take about 10 days to 2 weeks to get these ships back in line over in China. Then it's a 2-week trip here to LA. So we're starting to cut it pretty close with respect to inventory in the U.S.
So we might see some empty shelves even if the tariffs are brought down in the next couple of weeks.
We're running out of time on that. And if we have fewer items to select from, that's going to put a pinch on the American buyer.
This is not a panic post. We have a couple more weeks before shelves are empty. Trade has ground to a halt because of 145% tariffs. That rate is so high, it slams the brakes on everything. You're probably thinking, that was a month ago. Why haven't we seen this yet? It takes 20 to 40 days for a container ship to go from China to US ports, and then approximately another week for the containers to unload and then ship off in trains and trucks across the US, according to Apollo, as reported by New York Times. So we are looking at late May, early June for major supply shock, unless the US and China can reach a trade agreement. If they do in the next few weeks, theoretically we should be fine. Companies have been stockpiling goods for months to get ahead of the tariffs, kind of like how consumer spending went up last month. Buy it before it doubles or triples in price, right? So for all my investors out there, how does this play out in markets? Well, the longer we go without a trade deal, the more anxious investors are going to get because everyone hates uncertainty. And because everything is ground to a halt with companies suspending plans, stopping shipments, going into survival mode, many economists have predicted recession. Soon, too, June or Q3. On the other hand, we've seen what happens when negotiations go well for all parties. The market skyrockets. So, two totally different scenarios. I'm staying my long-term course and not going too far in one direction or another because I don't want to overhedge. That is the thing. Would love to hear from all of you about how you're handling this.
Man, it's happening. It's happening. Empty shelves. Look at that. There we go. Right here at Walmart. I ain't trying to scare nobody, but I'm just saying. You do what y'all gotta do. Empty, 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 man.
Describe for us, let's take a beat, really frame it for us, how much volume has just dropped off in the last few weeks?
Yeah, about a third of the import volume, which means give or take about 50,000 20-foot equivalent units gone off the arrivals coming in next week.
From next week is when you expect to see this really hit?
That's correct, and that matches up. The announcement's back on April 2nd, then on April 8th, a little bit of a change on everybody ex-China, Mexico, Canada, and those arrivals are coming at us this weekend.
We'll, of course, dedicate time to your port, but I'm just wondering how you're anticipating this rolls and ripples through the economy from here, how it hits trucking, when this turns up on the shelf. What's the distance, the time, from when you see a drop-off in volume and when we, as consumers, see the shortages?
Right, so CEOs are telling me, hit the pause button, right? I'm not going to import anymore at these kind of prices. Let's wait and see. I don't know if it's going to be 2 hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks till I get some clarity. Then, hiring. Off the table for right now. Capital investment, pause. And the retailers are telling me that realistically, with even the 10%, I'm going to have to pass it on to the consumers.
So how much is this really coming from all over? It's not just about China. This is about really global trade coming to a standstill until there is a much greater degree of certainty and a much lower tariff rate than even the baseline that's been put out there.
Yeah, when I was last with you all, Lisa, I said global trade's going to slow, economies will follow, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Back in November, so many of us were wringing our hands about 4% inflation. We've just added 10 percentage points to imports coming out of Southeast Asia for our port, and these unbelievable numbers out of China.
How much are you going to see a real decline in dock workers if this goes on?
Yeah, this is the question. So the trucker hauling 4 or 5 containers today, next week, she probably hauls 2 or 3. The dock workers are no longer going to see overtime and double shifts. They're going to probably work less than a traditional work week, starting right off the bat. Every 4 containers mean a job. So when we start dialing this back, it's less job opportunities.
And what happens if we get a deal?
If we get a deal, it's going to take about a month. Let me walk you through that real quick. About 2 weeks to get the ships repositioned around these major ports, from Qingdao to Shanghai to Xiamen, load up all those containers, and then another 2 weeks to steam across the Pacific to get to us. This is important because now we're talking about spring and summer fashion. So we're kind of at a crux here that we've got to have something pretty quick.
And back to school, which is,
right.
I think, very critical when it comes to political pushback for this administration. We have a story out, it was anecdotal reporting as well. We've heard about China quietly starting to exempt about a quarter of U.S. imports. Are any U.S. importers exempting Chinese tariffs? Is there a way to get around the 145%?
Not really. There may be some exceptions, Anne-Marie, maybe a little bit going north or south of us, but realistically speaking, nobody is out there talking a lot about, hey, I got a better deal coming out of China right now.
The Flexport CEO joined us earlier in the week, and he said ocean freight is down 60% from China. When do we see 100%?
Good question. It depends on how long this goes. We heard the reports overnight through Bloomberg that the folks in China are thinking about talking. What does that mean? Okay, great, but we've got to get a move on here. The other thing is that retailers are saying we've got about 5 to 7 weeks of normal inventory in the country right now. Then we start to see spot shortages if it goes on much beyond this.
MAGA is about to understand tariffs for the first time. Experts say we're about to experience pandemic-like scarcity that could last for years. Average price hikes costing $5,200 a year and hundreds of thousands of jobs lost. But MAGA keeps falling for Trump's lies about the economy and changing their narratives about what the tariffs are all about. During the campaign, Trump said tariffs are a tax on other countries that won't affect the U.S.
It's not going to be a cost to you. It's going to be a cost to another country. It's a tax that doesn't affect our country. They're going to have to pay us.
That's probably why 46% of Republicans still believe tariffs will help the economy in the short term. But now Trump has admitted costs will rise and that they'll hurt the economy.
Maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
So some Trump supporters changed their narrative again, saying, oh yeah, the tariffs will cause short-term pain, but it's for long-term gain. If that's true, when will we see the benefits from these tariffs? When will manufacturing come back to the US so we can all work in factories again? Experts say it could take up to 10 years. That's because it takes time to move manufacturing. We don't have the infrastructure. But even if manufacturing is moved to the US, products will still cost more. Trump's next lie that MAGA keeps repeating, he said that because of the income from the tariffs, there will be no income tax on people making less than $200,000. But that's not up to him, and that's not in any budget bills proposed by Congress. Plus, the tariffs wouldn't even bring in enough money to do what Trump's proposing. He's playing MAGA. He's effectively raising taxes on all Americans to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy, stringing them along with empty promises. The good news, some Trump voters are already waking up as his economic approval rating drops to 37%. Turns out owning the libs will get your self owned too.